Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello, or ni hao as they say in China. Pat O'Toole, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal here, welcoming you to this week's podcast, which has a distinctly Chinese feel to it. Coming up, we hear of the continuing controversy over the decision to introduce compulsory electronic tagging of all sheep. And Tommy Moyles talks to farmers unhappy that CPOs are being used for the route of the Kerry Greenway.
We have no problem with the Greenway itself as an entity, but our trouble is what it is doing to the farmland it is going through.
But first, we start with the trade mission to China this week, where ABP signed a €50 million deal with Asian restaurant chain Wow Prime. Mark Goodman of ABP speaks to Phelim O'Neill about exporting Irish beef to the country that accounts for 1/5 of the Earth's population.
I'm joined by Mark Goodman from ABP, who would be looking after, I suppose, the company's interest in China. Mark, this trade mission, an exciting opportunity for the Irish meat industry, your company included.
Yes, Phelim, it's a fantastic opportunity for Team Ireland, I would say, in the Irish beef industry. It's the culmination really of 7 years of hard work by our Ministers for Agriculture, our Department of Agriculture, the market access teams, Board BIA, the diplomats, and obviously ourselves. And we've managed to land a contract as well. So we're pretty excited about it.
Tell us a little bit about that contract. What will that mean?
So the contract is with Wow Prime. Wow Prime is a publicly listed restaurant chain operating in Taiwan and China. They've got 400 restaurants. 150 of those are in China, and we will be targeting at least 100 of those in their top tier brands, Tasty and Wang Steak. Have
you a team on the ground in China?
We do. We've had boots on the ground here since 2011. We've been doing research and trying to, I suppose, line up customers. So we do have a team here in Shanghai.
I know it's impossible ahead of starting business to sort of put numbers on it in any great precise detail, but there would be serious ambitions, I think, that this is a real game changer, if you like, for the Irish beef industry, that China has the potential. Like it's our second most important market for dairy products, our second most important for pig meat. Where can it get to in beef, do you think, in a reasonable time frame?
I think you only have to look at the statistics here. You've got 1.4 billion people, and they are only consuming at the moment 4 kilos per capita. Back home, that's 15. So, 1 kilo increase per person is more than 3 times Ireland's exports. That's the opportunity here. The other thing is it's an excellent hedge against the downside risk of things like Brexit and Mercosur.
And in terms of price-wise, the South Americans are the big suppliers to this market. Can we be competitive with them?
Absolutely. I mean, the South Americans have a cheaper product, but the quality is also lower. And if you take our contract, those chefs from Wow Prime flew to Ireland and did taste tests, and they're willing to pay the extra for the Irish beef because they see the quality in it.
When do you visualise your signing? I think you have the formal signing of the contract this week. When do you visualise the first product actually arriving in China for that customer?
We would expect to have the first deliveries in July or August at this stage.
And after that then, I presume they're not the only customer that you'll be dealing with. I'm sure you have other deals in the pipeline as well that you haven't told us as much about.
Yes, we're working on some other deals. So as you can see, we've started with the food service industry here. And I suppose our next focus will be online retail. China is, from an online retail point of view, it's an absolute juggernaut. 30% of retail in China is done online, whereas back home it's much less. So we'll be targeting the likes of JD.com and Tmall to get Irish beef online so people can buy it with their phones.
So is there, finally then, I suppose to wrap up, in the past Irish companies have went in, developed new markets, and sometimes we've tended to be each other's biggest competitors in those. Do you think we can avoid that in China? Is there enough room in China for everyone?
Absolutely. It's a huge market, as we've said, and I think the Irish companies have plenty of scope to go and find individual customers, but we're all selling the same thing, quality Irish beef, and that's all that matters.
Mark Goodman, ABP, thank you very much.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
In Shanghai, Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Thomas Hubert meets Ariand Ek, who analyses Chinese agri-food for the consultancy China Policy. He sees China's agri-food focus as shifting from quantity to quality.
Hello, this is Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. We're in Shanghai where the EU trade mission is taking place, and one of the speakers who addressed all the food exporters from the EU who are visiting here was Erlen Eck from China Policy. Erlen, you've been looking at how China's agricultural sector develops and how it regulates itself with the authorities here as well for many years. You've given a presentation on how the structures, the Ministry of Agriculture, everything is changing at the moment. What are the key main changes that will make a difference to the way we in Europe export food to China?
Well, first what we need to recognize is that China is always changing, but I think what we've seen recently with the new government changes in March is probably the biggest governance and regulatory structure change since the 1980s. So that tells you a bit.
So how is it changing? What is the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, doing in a different way from now on?
So Ministry of Agriculture used to be in charge of agriculture. So they was in charge of the farms and production, made sure that they met their production targets, very focused on the quantity. What they have done now is that they have created a new Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. They have a much bigger budget, and their focus has changed from only focus on this production to be in charge of the whole rural area. But that also means that some of the regulatory responsibilities has been moved to other agencies who will then be in charge of, let's say, food safety. Though this is a transition period we are in now, so we will see over the next few years a more streamlined government and obviously changes in policy to make China more efficient, more quality-oriented, more sustainable.
So more sustainable, but not necessarily self-sufficient. They will still need to import as long as its quality is up to top standards. Is that the idea?
Exactly. So China has had focus on producing enough, obviously, for 1.3 billion people, and they are doing that now. They're not doing it sustainably. So they want to keep basically the production levels at the same. They could decrease, increase according to the global situation, but they prefer maybe to import more. But that also means that focus is changing more towards price and quality, and that's a global focus. Instead of only when they were focused on self-sufficiency, they focused on their own industry. Over the last 20 years, they have imported more and more. We will continue to see that, but it also depends on the sectors. So it depends on, are we talking about commodities, are we talking about special segments of quality products?
In Ireland, we export a lot of dairy products, beef and pig meat. Dairy and pig meat are already present in China. Beef just only got access. How are those policy changes and the way production within China is changing? Is that likely to affect those markets for Irish exporters coming to China?
I think what China is concerned about is to create international partners. Especially, you see this tension with the US at the moment. You see that WTO is under attack. And the future might be the future of trade might look very differently. So there is an obvious advantage in China for the world to export to China, but whereas before China had competitive advantage attracting world attention because of cheap labor and low standards, their new competitive advantage, as far as they see, is actually that they will be by far the biggest market in the world. And that means that they can set the rules. And the question is, will Ireland or will the world comply or accept these rules? And I think we're up for some tough time in terms of negotiations between these world powers, and where Ireland fits into maybe if we might talk about more fragmentation in global trade and not open free trades in the future.
Okay, Erland Egg, thank you very much.
Also in Shanghai, Glanbia Ireland's commercial manager for nutrition, John O'Donnell, speaks with Thomas Hubert at the Cial Food Exhibition.
John, you've been travelling with a delegation of European Union businesses, agri-food businesses in the country here for the last day or two and continuing on. What do you think of what you're seeing at the moment in China? What's your feeling from the mission at the moment?
Sure, Thomas. So China isn't new and the Chinese market's not new for Glanbia. We've been operating here since 2005. And actually the Avonmore brand has been here for the last 4 years in China. So it's not completely new for us. We do have a facility here in the Glanbia nutrition side of the business. But for me this week, what I'm trying to understand and the opportunity I'm trying to develop is around the synergy that we're seeing between the Chinese demand and desire for food security and on the Irish side, what's happening in terms of our milk growth. Our farmers are producing a very safe, traceable, high-quality product. And the question for us is, how do we create a proposition around that fits with what the Chinese consumer is looking here in China?
What kind of products do you already sell in China as Glanbia, and do you see any ideas of what else you could do from what you're saying, what you're seeing at the moment?
Sure, absolutely. So today, Glanbia Nutritionals is operating here with its vitamins and minerals premix business. But from the Irish context, we're selling our cream and our UHT milks out here. So the Avonmore brand is well established in China. The opportunity for us in the future is to develop more around the milk powders, the nutritional products, and even a lot of our customers today in the infant formula industry are making huge inroads here in China. The question for us is if we can develop opportunities that bring us closer to that consumer product. The challenge, of course, is you can't just sell your products here. You have to understand more about the Chinese consumer. And what we've learned this week is that that's evolving quickly. The way that we market and advertise our products here is changing. And Glanbia and the Irish industry as a whole has to be aware of that.
You've just mentioned infant formula, and I suppose that's where safety and quality is concerned. That's the highest, the premium market for these issues. You talk about coming closer to the consumer. Is Ireland known here? Is there any merit in coming in with infant formula that is branded as coming from Ireland? How are you received as Irish when you come to these customers in China?
Well, Ireland as a dairy producing industry is known in China, but not as well established as some of our competitors from New Zealand and even some of our European competitors. Origin Green and the Board Bia exploits out here have started to put us on the map, but there's a lot more that we can do as companies around supporting that and investing behind our brands out here. Does the Chinese consumer know about Irish infant formula? Yes, they do. About 10% of the world's infant formula is produced in Ireland now. The question is, can we create a value proposition that incorporates not only Ireland, but the quality, the safety, the traceability of the products that we're making and present that out here in China?
Okay, any next steps for you in China? Immediate things you think you can do as a result of this trip or any recent work in China?
Well, the big thing that we know about China is nothing happens immediately. So it's about building our presence here. It's about building the right strategy, taking our time and doing it correctly, understanding more about what the consumer wants here and how that's evolving. And Glanbia certainly has a strategy for growth in China. We know that won't happen overnight, but it's an important part of what we're going to do.
Okay, John, thank you. All the best for all the meetings here at Cial.
Thanks, Thomas.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Moving away from China, farm organisations have reacted to the introduction of EID sheep tagging. Selena McKenzie from Wicklow IFA and Kevin Comiskey from Leitrim IFA talked to Amy Ford.
The weather has been very bad. It's been a very bad winter. We've been heavily laden with costs and expenses from this minister. The sheep tagging has been introduced last week there, the EID tagging. We had the clipping in January. We had a dreadful winter, fierce hardship on farms with fodder and all the crises, and there's a huge cost there. We've been asked to carry all the costs in our shoulders. I think we have enough of this kind of carry on. The minister is in a good place in West Cork where he can see what's happening in the sheep farms around him. If he just took a small bit of time to look around and see what's happening, he'd have a good idea, and maybe he'd have a different view of what he's bringing in, and he might change his mind a small bit. But the cost is a huge problem for us. We can't bear any more of that. We don't have a problem with EID. We have a tagging system. It's working. We don't need to go changing it. if the car is not broken, we don't need to fix it. So I think he needs to look at this again, and I think he needs to come up with some better solutions. There are other stakeholders in this. I think they should be carrying some of the cost of it as well, not just the farmer taking all of it. It should be divided out equally, in my view.
Yet again, we are the ones that are the price takers. The cost has been thrown back at us. Let the stakeholders step up if they think it's such a good idea. I would believe that it's an operational charge, and it's their operation that's failing, whether it be in the boning yards or on their line. We know our sheep when they go in. They have a tag, they have a system that's already working. And I resent the fact that the cost is being put back on primary producers again and again, all through the system. And he quotes market access. At this rate, there will be no market, because the producers of lamb who have to double tag their lambs on his hearsay in October will be out of business. And notwithstanding the fact that it's 2 million out of an industry that is already subsistence, and we're below the industrial wage, and it's down to cost. And he's already conceded that it's a cost, because he's insulted us as an industry, very generously offering 50 quid towards the cost of sheep tags. It's not going to cost us 50 quid. The average sheep farmer producing lambs, 100 ewe flocks, it's more than 50 quid once you put tags in their ears. And let him put his hand in his pocket and pay for the tags.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Meanwhile, Odile Evans joins an ICSA protest outside Agriculture House on Kildare Street on Monday.
First of all, there's two issues I say today. There was a pattern of issues, but the two issues we decided that we chose today that we'd protest on is primarily because of calls into the office and calls that I've been getting over the two issues. First, we'll deal with the clean sheep policy. Now, we all want clean sheep. Farmers want clean sheep. We want our lamb to be accessible to all markets all over the world. But this system, or this change of policy, was introduced in the middle of a fattening system, in the middle of a system that has been around for decades, and farmers couldn't change. Now, what we're asking for, very simply in this situation, is that there's a window of opportunity now between now and next autumn, and that the stakeholders get together. There are solutions out there from all sides. Farmers can do things, meat plants can do things, everything. But it's the onus is on the department to pull all these stakeholders together, sit down, get solutions, and not to run into the same thing as we ran into last winter. We're heading for the same problem again next winter, because unless we change systems, and there's a huge onus in Teagasc. Teagasc fatten a lot of lambs. Thousands of lambs have been fattened in Teagasc over the last number of years. And we're asking Teagasc, have they done clean sheep scores on the different systems? If they have published the results, sending out leaflets to farmers is a waste of time. Telling farmers to put lambs onto a straw bed for a day or two before they kill them is a waste of time. We need to change the systems. We need to know what's happening. We cannot be turning up next winter going to a meat plant wondering will my lambs be killed or not, in a kind of a lotto situation. And we cannot have lambs like what happened last winter. We sent out to farms in Shorten, standing in layerages with the wool gone off them in the middle of a very, very cold winter. There's welfare issues. It just cannot happen. So look, at the onus is on the department. There's a window of opportunity, and we are calling on the department immediately to bring them stakeholders together and solve this problem once and for all. Now, the other reason we're here today is the whole EID problem, and the cost, unnecessary cost, is foisted upon farmers. And somewhere or other, the minister has been sold a pup on this one, because the only difference between an EID tag and an ordinary tag, first of all, is both contain numbers. The EID tag is, in general, it's readable by a wand, but after that, a tag is a tag, and it doesn't matter whether it's a 20-cent tag that we put in our sheep or a €1.20 tag we put in our sheep. Now, if this goes ahead, it's going to take out of sheep farmers' income. The Teagasc figures tell us there's €14 per head of a profit or a margin on lowland sheep. If this goes ahead, it's the equivalent of taking 7% out of that margin. It's a non-runner. It's ill thought out. It cannot go ahead. Now, if the minister wants to push ahead with it, by all means, if he pays for the tags, not just on a temporary basis, but pay for the tags going forward. And in the long term, if we see all these so-called markets that may open up or may not open up in the future, I think long term sheep farmers have no problem paying if there's more of a return out of the lamb. The other thing we must remember is that Ireland exports all types of meat, from fish meat, marine products, poultry, pig, beef, and there's no EID tagging in any of them foods. And we as farmers, we are consumers as well. Just because I or any sheep farmer has sheep, it doesn't mean that they have access to sheep meat. They buy the sheep meat over the counter, the very same as any other consumer. And we have full confidence in the meat we eat. We have full confidence the system is robust enough and stand up anywhere in the world. And these so-called new markets that's out there that's demanding this, they are currently trading with Southern Hemisphere countries. They're buying their sheep meat already, where the tagging system is anything but robust. So sheep farmers can't afford this. We won't accept it. ICSA, I can assure sheep farmers, ICSA will stand shoulder to shoulder with them on this issue, and we will not accept it. As I say, if the Minister wants to pay for it, absolutely we'll accept it, but you cannot come along and take 7% out of our income and expect us to pay for something that will only facilitate a meat plant currently.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Tommy Moyes talks to 2013 FBD Young Farmer of the Year winner John Buckley on what changes he has made to his farm since then.
Hi Tommy. Look, I entered this competition back in 2013. I suppose, it was always a competition I was very interested in taking part in at some stage. When you look at the profile of people that have won it in the past, you'd never really, you'd always want to maybe benchmark yourself against those sort of people. I was nominated to take part in the competition, look, we said we'd do the best we could and put our best foot forward, and I was just lucky on the day that I won the competition. It's been a fantastic experience. I suppose it has opened a lot of doors, and I've met a lot of very interesting people during the journey that have helped me out quite a lot along the way.
What would your advice be to people looking at entering the competition?
Look, the biggest thing is you just got to go out there and you have to try. I suppose I had a perception beforehand, that you need to be a certain type of farmer or whatever, but this competition is very much open to everyone. Get out there, get the entry form, fill it out, and just challenge yourself. At worst, you'll come out better at the other end.
You were saying during the walk that getting out to see other farms, no matter what type they are, what type of land conditions in comparison to your own, how important is that?
I think it's critical. I suppose this part of the country is challenging ground wise, but we can go to people in better land types than that, and you'll always pick up at least one thing that you can bring home and use on your own farm. And it's great to get out and realise that all the issues you're having on your own farm, that people on other farms are actually having exactly the same thing, and a problem shared is a problem halved.
You also said about being involved in other organisations outside the farm and the importance of that.
Yeah, look, it's just so vital to get off the farm, just even from your own mental health point of view, just to get out, talk to people, talk about the issues that are in farming, talk about issues that are happening in general out there, and it just opens your eyes to so much other things that are going on out around, and I suppose when you do come home, you probably appreciate more what you do have.
Right, this spring has been challenging. That would be an understatement. How is this spring, and even just today wasn't best weather-wise? How are you coping here?
Oh yeah, look, this winter, spring, call it what you want. It's been hard going. It's I suppose look, the last month or 6 weeks has been the final nail in the coffin. It's just very difficult. Ground conditions are just saturated, doing quite a bit of damage in paddocks and that sort of thing, but at the same time not a whole pile of feed left, and we just have to get out and graze. But look, everyone is in the same boat, and we're all trying to do our best, and hopefully we're close to turning the corner.
you're saying there that you're still trying to complete your first rotation.
Yeah, we still have 2 days left in first rotation. Now we're probably a week into grazing second rotation at the same time. But it's this land type you have in this part of the country. You know, you need a flexible rotation, and you have to watch your forecast, and you know you have to be willing to mix it up a bit. You know, just to try and avoid poaching and damage as much as possible.
Meanwhile, in Kerry, Tommy Moyle speaks to a number of farmers who are protesting against compulsory purchase orders for the Kerry Greenway.
The big issue really is land sovereigns. It wouldn't be a problem if it was down near a road or down near the river or either side of the main road. We wouldn't have to cross it with animals and machinery. At least you'd only be crossing it once.
So you're not against the Greenway?
No, we are for the Greenway.
Yeah.
We have no problem with the Greenway itself as an entity. What our trouble is, what it is doing to the farmland it is going through. It is dividing the farms, it's separating the farmer from silage ground, it's making it so that you have to pass the cycleway with the cyclists trying to get where they are going. You are having to pass over and back with your machinery, with your animals on a day-to-day basis, and your daily farm work has to be done over the Greenway.
Speaking there with Dennis O'Connor. Dennis, how many farmers is this affecting? Roughly.
All told, there's 130 landowners. We reckon there's councillors saying there's 170 affected landowners. People who are actively farming, I'd say there'd be less than 50.
Yeah. Christy, your land is going to be split here.
That's right, it's going to be split again. Yeah, this is split twice before, so they're going to make another road down through it now again, so we'll be split 3 times.
And you've offered various alternatives to the council?
I've offered them the right hand side of the main road, the left hand side of the main road, the lower road, and I offered them a tunnel. I offered them, if they put a tunnel in for me, that they'd leave me as I am overhead and let the cyclists cycle away without disturbing me, but no, the answer was no. They just said it wouldn't be viable to put in a tunnel. It would cost too much, 15,000 for something that was going to be there for the next 200 years. It was a joke.
So it's very fair to say that you're frustrated with this?
Oh, very much so. It is unreal the way they're treating the people.
I'll spin around here now to Seamus Walsh. Seamus, what's, like, you've an alternative offered even across the road that there's only going to be two landowners affected? Or two dwellings?
There'll be two structures, as I say, what you call it, one of which will be mine. As I say, as you'd speak to most of the farmers here, our lands are already divided, our farms are divided already by the main Ring of Kerry road, which is a busy road. As I said, there is difficulties trying to move animals at different times of the day across that road. And now, as I say, from my point of view, as I say, you will have another road, as I say, a 16-foot wide road, a greenway. As I say, it is subdividing my farm again. So we have given the alternative of using minor roads, which are, to my mind, are a far more cost-efficient method for Kerry County Council than having to build something on the new. There is one section of it, as I say, it is 8 kilometres, and there are only 2 structures on it. One of the structures would be an old house of our own, and we have offered, as I say, Kerry County Council, they could do what they like with it, as I say, it is, and put the road just below the main road. And what it would mean for me, as I say, already I have to go in one gate. It was just adding another gate instead of, as I say, 2 gates as it is, as I say, and 2 gates again on the Greenway.
Yeah. Patricia, you're on about it's going across your farm as well, and your husband is full-time farming. The big issue is going to be you have cyclists who aren't used to animals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Encountering suckler cattle.
That's one of our main concerns. He's a full-time farmer, and I suppose to do your daily work, you're going to be moving animals from one field to the other from A to B, and just from a safety point of view, trying to move them with people coming up to the gate, we'll say, where you're trying to get them out, that's not going to work. It's not viable. There's a danger to the cyclist, and there's a danger to the farmer who's working with their animals, because animals, sucklers, we have sucklers, they're lively at the best of times, so we don't want them to be we don't want them to get worse, I suppose, by encountering strangers. You know,
it's a health risk to
health
not
risk,
just
yeah.
the farmer,
At the
but
moment
to
they're perfectly calm and whatever. But you know, when there's strangers around, they get excited. Like if you bring an animal to a mart, they get excited. Hence, at the marts at the moment, it's all safety conscious. People can't go in. They don't want them to be around strangers. So it's the same concept here. They're going to be enclosed, trying to get through gates, narrow gates, and there's going to be people all the time. So it's going to make it very, very dangerous. We're worried about the danger.
Yeah. You've had the council out with you before. Something that has come up in conversation. You've all been individually told that you're the only person objecting.
Yes, we were told here we were the only person out that hadn't signed. They actually said my neighbour had signed, which he hadn't, or any other one hadn't signed. So we were all told that the other one had signed, only ourselves.
We'll finish up on this one. What's the best scenario you'd like to see?
If they took one of the minor roads and built it as to be perfectly in keeping with the Eurovelo cycling routes and their...
And those existing roads, they form part of the existing Kerry Way, don't they?
They do, yes. They're already part of the Kerry Way and
so they're signed.
Yeah,
they're of good standard.
They're of good standard. They're perfectly in keeping with the thing. If the sides were cleaned up, the bushes cleaned off of them, widen them a small bit and put the cycleway down alongside them. You would have low traffic. You could make it local traffic only and reduce the speed limit down to whatever it had to be. And people could cycle and meet a couple of cars locally on the way.
And on top of that, there's a significant cost saving, I'd imagine.
I would think so. I would say a savage cost saving.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
And finally, this week, a new farm safety campaign was launched by the Health and Safety Authority in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture.
What makes your farm tick? The animals, the tractor's engine, the machinery. And what makes your farm dangerous? When these become background noise and you don't notice the danger, always beware of machinery on the farm. A message from the Health and Safety Authority in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Visit hsa.ie.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.